Hello, welcome back to Halftime TV. Naranda Brown here, your host, and as always, we have some interesting information for you. Well, there are two things that are really sure in this life, and they're taxes and death. But I can add another one to that list, and it is news from the JFF. Now, as most of you, or even all of you, may have known by now, there was an open letter published in the Jamaica Gleaner today, Sunday, June 20, what date is it? 26, 27, from Roy Simpson, the team manager. And he spoke at length about what was going to happen going forward, what he was expecting come the Gold Cup in a few weeks' time. And some of that news, some may say is bad news. I personally think there's no such thing as bad news. It's just a perspective and who that news benefits most. I first must say thank you to my sponsors, Quicklink Shipping, RS Sports Store, and CSA Shop. I'll provide the link in the description as soon as this video is finished. And if you haven't done so as yet, just hit that subscribe button. Let's get us to 1,000 subscriptions as soon as possible. Now, over to Roy Simpson and his letter. We've been having discussions week in, week out about USL players being included in the national setup, why USL players should not be included, the disdain for foreign-based or English-based talent. And it brought us back all the way around, full circle, to the local players and who would suffer. Everything that came about pointed to local players suffering. And it definitely said something to me, because I personally thought about it, and I thought from the onset that local players, they were out to lose the most from this entire ordeal, whichever way it panned out. Now, in 2020, in the Jamaica Observer, Roy Simpson did an interview, and he said, and I quote, "It's a concern for us. We have been inactive competitively from March, which is also a concern to us because we have not been doing anything locally. We still await the go-ahead from the Ministry of Health." Now, he was alluding to the local Premier League at the time, which it's June now, and the Premier League only recently resumed. So we had some friendlies. We had some friendlies in which some local players were called up, and those local players, their inclusion was questioned. And there are a lot of lobbies for the inclusion of local players in the national setup. But there are also some who will say they need the best players on the field of play at any given time. And the sad reality is probably there will become a time, when our best 11 doesn't include any players from the local Premier League or from the Red Stripe Premier League. It is what it is. Or recruitment, that some of the names that we've been seeing coming in for the past few months, it is quite indicative that there will become a time when we will be going through that roster, and 90% of them probably will be English based and the rest from the MLS or elsewhere. But going back to Roy Simpson's letter, it is sad, because I know there are a lot of players who hoped and dreamt of playing for the national team. They dreamt of going to the Gold Cup and representing the black, green, and gold. But that dream was taken away from them, not by the Jamaica Football Federation, not by any of the coaches, but by a pandemic that affected all of us, that affected the entire world for that matter, something that we've never seen before. And it is the harsh reality. In the letter that was published, Roy also indicated that the players should continue working hard. They should continue putting in those extra hours in training, continue preparing, because there's a World Cup campaign, which will commence in September. Now, that is good motivation, and considering we're now in June, we're going over in July, we're at the back end of June. So say for instance, July, August, that's 2 full months to prepare and to get themselves in shape and in order for the commencement of the World Cup campaign. But there are a few questions that I want to ask. I'll get to them in a second, though. For those who will mention and say, but there's players in the 60-man list who are unattached, and players who haven't played since whenever. It's a valid point. But 14 or 15 months is a far cry or a long cry from 4 or 5 months. And for those players who are within that setup who haven't played competitively, who are a part of a team but haven't played competitively, they're still training with players who are playing competitively week in, week out. So I hope that argument is swept to the side, and I just addressed it. For the local players, we have to accept that it has been coming. We looked at the local Premier League, and the first thing when the news broke that the Premier League was cancelled, and months later when we're looking back, we saw that the persons are those who were set to suffer most from this halt in play were the local players. Those local players who didn't get or haven't gotten the big contract to go overseas as yet. Those local players who are still waiting to showcase their skills and their qualities. We also have the schoolboy footballers, because they would have been playing their last season come the end of December 2020. So they would have transitioned over into the local Premier League, and they didn't get a last season in local football at the schoolboy level. So they too suffered. And in general, we have to say the entire local population, when it comes down to football, the local football population, they suffered, and they suffered significantly. And as a result, it has culminated in them being eliminated from the Gold Cup squad. Whether it was something that needed to come out and say, I think Roy chose his methods, and his methods have to be accepted, because had it been a case where we got to the end of the month or next week, then, because I believe the 23-man list needs to be submitted by the middle of next week, by the end of the month, the 30th over to the 1st of July. So had it gotten down to that stage and the list of the 23 was published and we didn't see any local players, would we really be surprised then? That is my question to you. Let me know what you think. But in my opinion, it was coming sooner rather than later. We would have gotten to the end of June, early July, the list would have been published, and there are those who lobby for local players, which I have nothing against. If you're doing well at the local league, you deserve to represent your country. You deserve at least to be called up or invited to the national setup. But there are those who will lobby that because they're playing in the local league, or we definitely need to have a local representative in the national setup. That's an argument that needs to be addressed, but it is an argument also for another day. I won't go into that today because it is subjective and persons are entitled to their opinion. And whether your opinion is based on the development of the football, or wanting to win something in the know, or wanting to get to the Gold Cup, which is essentially in the know as well, it needs to be approached from different standpoints. And as a result, I think what Roy said, it made sense. All aspects of it were justified, because any rational and well-thinking human being can understand the angles from which he's coming. There is no way we're going to have players who haven't played competitively since March 2020, and we're going to take them into a tournament. For the tournament lasts a month, and we're not guaranteed. The most games we're guaranteed to play is 7, and that is if we go all the way. So we don't know if we'll go all the way as yet, but let's hope that is the case. But as I said before, the local players, they will feel disheartened, they will feel demotivated, and the publishing of this letter will send a clear message to them. Some will take it as a setback for a better comeback, whereas some will take it as being tossed aside by the local federation. Whichever way you take it, I hope it is in the positive light. I hope you take it as a motivator to come back better come September, when it's time for the World Cup qualifiers. And remember, the World Cup qualifiers goes from September to March, and then the playoffs is in June. So you have a lot of time to get yourselves ready to represent the country when that begins. But the question that I wanted to ask from the beginning of the show is, what happens if this set of players that we're sending to the Gold Cup wins it? Do we then disrupt this batch to add the local players because they're local players? That is my question to you. That is my question to the Jamaican Football Federation. This is my question to those persons who are lobbying for local players to be included. And it's my question to you, the fans, as well. If we formulate a batch of players, a 23-man squad that goes into the Gold Cup and dominates and goes all the way and wins the prize, do we fix something that's not broken? Do we come back from the Gold Cup and shuffle the pack and add some local players to that batch just for the sake of adding local players? Think about it. Thanks for watching another episode of Halftime TV. Remember to leave your comments in the comment section. Let me know what you think. Local players, they've been left behind. Sad, but we saw it coming. The reality of the matter is you haven't played competitively for 15 months, and it is just impossible for them to be included in a 23-man squad for the Gold Cup. A Gold Cup which spans across a month, 7 games. The local Premier League only now commenced. But what then? What can we take from it? There will be some players who will be performing well, but how many games will there actually be before the beginning of the Gold Cup? Noranda Brown here saying thanks for tuning in. Remember to like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, take good care.